Hey, what is up, guys? Here to give you a review on the 2014 Moto X, which is made by Motorola. So the first thing you're going to notice about this phone is that it is curved in the back, and this actually gives it a better feeling in the hand than something like an iPhone, which is just a simple, flat piece of aluminum. So moving on with this phone, it has pretty decent specs. I mean, nothing crazy, but nothing totally bad by today's standards. It's packing 2 gigs of RAM, a Snapdragon 801 chip, an Adreno 330 GPU, 16, 32, and now 64 gigabytes of onboard storage, which is not expandable by the way, and a 1080p AMOLED display, which actually looks really good. The colors are so rich, which is what AMOLEDs do. So what I mean by that is darks and blacks are very, very rich and deep because the screen actually doesn't have the light pixels in order to show those colors. So you're able to get very saturated colors without necessarily running into battery life problems. Which brings me to my next point, battery. Now, it's kind of a trade-off with this phone. The battery isn't the best, but everything else about this phone, other than the camera, which I'll get to in a minute, is up to par with phones like the OnePlus One and the Nexus 6. Now, the battery is 2300 milliamps, which is enough to get you through the day, but to me, I found that I was ending the day with 10 or 15%. So I'm sure by this time you noticed that this phone is red with a blue trim with my name actually on it, and that's due to Motorola's biggest selling point, in my opinion, for this phone, the Moto Maker, and this allows you to customize your phone to your heart's content. There's over 2,000 different ways to make this phone, and you can really make it yours. Anything you want it to get done, you can get done. They have leather backs, plastic backs, wood backs, and to me, I think that is really cool. And just unique. That makes your phone an extension of you, which is what I think it should be. So this phone comes in 16, 32, or 64 gigabyte variants. I have the 32 gigabyte version of this. Unfortunately, I do have the Verizon edition, which does come with unremovable bloatware, but to me that's not too big of a deal, considering I'm using this phone as a second phone and I don't really need that much storage. Now, I mentioned the camera was kind of mediocre, and it's not that the camera's mediocre. On paper, it can shoot internal 4K video, it can take 13 megapixel photos, and has really good specs to it. But the ISO is cranked up too high, which makes the pictures look very blurry and just overall bad, not very good for sharing on Instagram. This is coming from somebody who's been using an iPhone for years. My last thing about this phone are the front-facing speakers, or the front-facing speaker. There's only one, don't let it fool you. The other one's just for phone call, and this comes in the color of your choice too. So now the reason this phone is able to get such amazing performance is because it runs nearly 5.0 Lollipop, which is stock Android, which is something I think a lot of phone manufacturers really need to do. So I give a very big thumbs up in that department. So this is the review of the 2014 Moto X, and subscribe.